Good day to you all, wherever you may be, and thank you for tuning in for the Wayports Racing League Round 3 at Fern Bay Green, presented by Sim Broadcast. Those of you who are regular viewers may recognize that I am not Peter Butcher. Peter Butcher cannot join us today, though he's still there in the background. My name is Travis Mellinger, and today I will be joined by Tilo Falkenberg in the commentary box to cover this event at Fern Bay Green. Tilo, how are you doing today?
Good, afternoon, everybody, at least if you're from Europe. Good morning and good evening to elsewhere in the world. I'm very fine. Enjoying a lovely day, and now down in Jamaica, Fern Bay Green, third round of Wayports Racing League.
Are you in Jamaica or just pretending you're in Jamaica? I would like to be in Jamaica.
Latter.
All right, fair enough. We've got about 4 minutes and change left in qualifying right now. We don't see that on the stream quite yet, but we do have cars going around. 4 minutes left. Right now, we've got Santiago in the top spot, Mariano and Andy behind. We'll follow them around in just a moment. There we go. We've got Santiago going around. Right now, setting the benchmark time at a 1:29.6, with Mariano in second at a 30.8, and Andy at a 31.37. And you can see the other drivers further down the standings there. About 3 minutes left for them to improve their times, and then we'll have a short break and start the race once qualifying has concluded. There's an interesting element to today's event. In order to make the racing a little bit more interesting, a bit more competitive, and add kind of a humor and fun factor, the top 3 drivers in the standings have taken on additional ballast in the form of passengers. So if you watch when these cars are going around, you can see a person in the passenger seat there as Santiago goes by. Santiago carrying additional ballast, Andy also carrying additional ballast, and Mariano as well. Passengers in the car, each of those weighs 70 kilograms, so a substantial handicap placed on those cars in order to try to close up the battle at the front of the field.
Yes, indeed. Oh! And this is bringing us to the standings of... Yeah, there on the screen we see currently the championship after 2 rounds. We have Andy in the lead, but it's still early in the season. Then Mariano in second position, third position Santiago, so those 3 with the passengers, as Travis told you just moments ago. Valentina, Wellington, Eduardo, Ian, and Arthur are rounding up the top 8 in the championship. And today we're also joined by by Alex for Step Up. We will talk about him in a little bit.
Here we go. We got the team standings on the screen right now. At the top, Vertex Racing on 77 points, followed by the McLean Library. Mariano doing all of the work. No, not all of the work. My mistake. Joined by his teammate Valentina, bringing them up to the second position in the standings. Third in the standings, Bank of Wayports on 30 points. And then Lilium and Atrium tied on 12 points in fourth and fifth in the championship standings. On screen now, we've got the calendar. This is the third round at Fern Bay Green. Next week, we will have round 4 at Aston Cadet Circuit. And then we'll go to Blackwood, West Hill, a couple more rounds at Blackwood after that. Back to Fern Bay for round 9 near the end of September, and then the final round on October 2nd at Kyoto Ring National Reverse. That happens to be my favorite circuit in the game, so I am looking forward to the conclusion of this season and calling that race. I love Kyoto Ring. I love it reversed. Today, though, we are going around Fern Bay Green. Tilo, this track is notorious for one corner, and that is that very first chicane. I think in more recent Live for Speed competitions, the organizers tend to put some bollards and tires to tighten up that chicane a little bit. As it is a very fast and very dangerous chicane. I expect we will see a little bit of carnage here today, as we see one car just clip the tires. That's why it's so dangerous.
Yeah, that's Andy for Vertex in the background of the screen, who just got away with it, and with the additional ballast of having 3 passengers in the car, this chicane does not get easier with our, traditional Wayports Racing League car, the XFG, carrying a 1.3 liter inline front engine, front wheel driven, very lovable car, very entry friendly, and the car of choice since season 1.
So the clock has ticked down for qualifying. Last few drivers going to be coming through the start-finish line to conclude their laps right now. We've got Valentina coming around the final corner, brings the car down below the white line, staying nice and tight to shorten the track as much as possible over the line. Valentina does not improve, still in 4th on a 32.23. A car stopped out on track. We can see Eduardo there behind the tires. Now looking ahead to Arthur. Arthur off in the grass there over the curb. Probably will not improve his time. And I believe
we're
Arthur
through with times.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I don't see any other cars on track, and I don't know. I think Arthur got through in time to start this lap, but it looks like he may have backed off quite a bit now, so I doubt he will be improving. But we will follow him around, and then we'll have a few moments to chat and then a brief break before we start this race. We expect it to be about 29 laps. Is that right, Tilo?
Yes, this is the lap count we got before the event. So it's quite a lengthy race with 1 minute 30 lap times.
Yeah, saw Arthur, as we were talking, saw Arthur go off in the background there. So that concludes qualifying. Cars coming out to do warm-up laps now, shake out the sillies, get their heads into race mode. Tilo, let's talk a little bit about Alex starting in 9th position. New driver today.
Yes, a very new driver and a driver with a mission. He is racing for Step Up. Step Up itself is an initiative to fight discrimination and mobbing of trans children. So a very noble cause.
I agree, and I'm glad we can draw some attention to it for them today. So good for him. It's a great mission. We're glad to have him here with us, and we're glad that he's doing that work.
So basically, the goal of Step Up is to protect people's rights in general and trans people's rights in general by software that can identify hateful legislation and brings up the potential dangers for the trans community.
Last few drivers going around, chat messages, wishing everyone good luck. Should be kicking off the start of the race in just a few moments. Cars gridding up now, and we can see that on the stream. Looking at Santiago in pole position with Mariano alongside. Lights are on. And now out, green, away we go. Santiago gets a pretty good start. He's got Mariano still alongside. But Mariano not quite there, should tuck into this chicane, so this is where it's really dangerous. These cars want to go through here single file, tiptoe around. A couple cars into the tires, but nobody spun off. Looks like, Tilo Mariano got the worst of it. Valentina also got a tire in the windshield as drivers ahead of her were going off, but I don't see anyone mired back in the chicane. A little bit ragged start, but everybody through pretty cleanly, following Andy now in P2.
Oh, and he's sliding off track, offline, sliding around with the extra ballast in the car.
Yeah, I think that'll be awfully tricky on cold tires.
And we see that Mariano has to defend himself from Eduardo, racing for Bank of Wayports, who's spinning around and hitting the barrier hard.
Yeah, it's really tough in these cars on cold tires because all of the weight, we've talked about this in the last event, the last Wayports event, and then in the in a recent Tuesday Fun or a GTR, no, not a GTR Monday race, a recent event that featured these cars. It's really difficult in the front wheel drive cars, especially these cars with road tires on, with all of the weight and the power at the front. And it's difficult to get the heat into the tires, and then the back end of the car really wants to snake around, as you see ahead of Mariano there. Andy getting a little bit squirrely coming out of the last corner. Meanwhile, in the lead, Santiago has driven away from his competitors behind, though he does a big drift through the first part of the chicane and the second part of the chicane, manages to collect it, keep it out of the wall, avoid the tires. Off he goes, and behind them, Andy and Mariano alongside coming out of the chicane. Looks like Mariano had to back out of it. He was alongside, perhaps thought better of it. Now trailing Andy through this sequence of sweeping bends and big curbs. Tilo, another feature of this track, apart from the diabolical first chicane, is like this one right here. You can see the car bouncing. Enormous curbs that will take a toll on these cars. Perhaps not as much as the proper racing machines, but will still, they'll need to care for their equipment because there are a lot of obstacles around the edges of this circuit.
Indeed, you're right. And one of the more crucial aspects of these curbs is the fact that they are throwing you out of balance. We've seen a couple of times already cars sliding after making contact with one of these curbs, or eventually they can turn the car upside down. So you really have to be careful to not go through too many of these curbs, because one bad hit and maybe you are upside down. As Arthur for Atrium is the first driver to make his mandatory pit stop today.
That is one feature of the rules in this competition, is that each driver is required to make a mandatory pit stop. They do not have to take service, no need to take fuels, certainly no need to take tires. But now one driver, Arthur, falling to the back, taking his mandatory pit stop. Tilo, you were telling us about how dangerous the curbs can be and how it can upset the car and pitch it over. And Ian gave us a nice display of that as you were talking about it, bouncing over the curbs coming through the final part of the circuit with Valentina in close pursuit. Looking at Mariano now, not too far behind Andy in second position. I think they've succeeded somewhat in keeping the racing pretty close at the front. These two in close contention. Still a couple seconds behind Santiago out in the lead, about 2.5 seconds. But they are driving away from Ian and Valentina, battling for fourth and fifth.
And speaking of the top three, Santiago will see that their fellow competitors are getting bigger and bigger, since Andy just set the fastest lap of the race. A 1:32.52.
Santiago coming through the final corner now as we look back from Andy, who goes, off in the grass. Mariano's going to take advantage of this, looks to the inside, easily by as he comes across the start-finish line. We'll take P2, come back across the racetrack to line up this chicane with plenty of clearance in front of Andy. Looking down the order with 3 laps complete, starting lap 4, Andy just touches the tires there pretty close. Santiago in first position, a few seconds clear of Mariano, who just took second place before crossing the start-finish line. Andy in third, Ian in fourth, in a battle with Valentina in fifth, Eduardo back in sixth, Alex in seventh, Wellington in eighth place, and Arthur falling back to ninth position after taking his mandatory pit stop early. That is the order as we run right now. Great overhead shot here. Excellent. Oh, my goodness. This is an excellent overhead shot. See the top 3 all in view coming through the very fast back part of this circuit. Mariano going by Santiago there. I'm not sure what happened. He slowed before he entered that bend. Not entirely.
I have no idea.
Well, I see smiles in chat, so I wonder if he let them by to make this interesting. Not entirely clear what's going on there, but I guess if they're going to shake it up like that for fun and amusement, this will be good for us as they run nose to tail. We'll take it. Santiago was leading, now running second behind Mariano, with Andy in pursuit.
There were discussions earlier during qualifying that Santiago set one of his lap times
Oh,
without a
sorry,
passenger.
Tilo. Sorry to interrupt you. Andy went off
Oh,
in the background. He got it all wrong coming through that final sequence of corners and went through the tires. Managed to point it the right direction after his spin off the final corner. I think he got into the wall. He did. There's damage on the right front of that car. So he continues in third, has now lost the better part of 10 seconds, 8 seconds behind in third now, as the two in the lead have run away from him. Santiago got it a little wrong in the first chicane, but still right there with Mariano. I interrupted you there, Tilo. Sorry, please continue.
no problem. So basically, my idea was that Santiago had the advantage without driving a passenger during quali, and maybe he decided to give back the position to Mariano, who started in second.
Oops, sorry to... We're going to look to the back of the grid. Alex, Arthur hard on the brakes to avoid Alex. Alex got the car a little bit wrong through the final sequence of corners, was running around in 8th after Arthur had taken his early pit stop. Looks like Alex may bring it down to pit lane. He's coming into pit lane. Looking ahead, Valentina all over the back of Ian. Gets it a little bit wrong as Ian bumps the curb there. I think she had to check up to avoid hitting him as he got the car unsettled. A little bit further back now. She'll hit the brakes really hard. We got a great shot from Ian looking back at Valentina. Valentina takes all of the curb on the left-hand corner, carrying as much speed as she can through there. Now going to follow Ian. Just touches the curb there on the left. That's the fastest way around, though it looks like she upset the car just a little bit. Not in as close contention as they were a few moments ago, but she is hunting for 4th place. There's a car off on the left that she drove past. I didn't see who it was, as Alex is going to be exiting the pits right in front of this battle. He'll come out behind the top 3 and in front of Valentina and Ian. Alex going through the chicane now. Ian just coming up to it. Alex got the chicane right, so he won't be in the way for these two competing. Ian, a little bit squirrely coming through the chicane, but manages to collect it. Valentina through safely as well. This is where I think it's going to become a little bit difficult for Alex. He's a new driver. He's driven straight off the circuit. I was going to say it might be difficult for him to become accustomed to staying out of the way of the leaders. And Alex, as far as I can tell, Alex has given up. He's really struggling to keep control of the car further back. He's now reset in the barriers inside the first sequence of corners. We'll look ahead to Valentina, who is still trailing Ian.
Yeah, just to get 2 more words about Alex out. It's his first race, as you've mentioned, and it's the first time to compete in such a series for him. As we look on board, Mariano dives into the pits.
Yeah, he made a very late lunge for the pits there. Santiago was a little bit wrong out of the final corner and off in the grass, and then Mariano looked like he'd lost control of the car too, but was just making a quick dive to the pits. That's a very fast stop, and he's on his way out. He should come out ahead of Ian. He does. So Mariano pitting from the lead pack, still out in 3rd place, about 13 seconds behind Santiago, who has steamed off into the lead well ahead of Andy and Mariano.
Yeah, steamed away with the fastest lap. He set a 1:31.43. So not only did his most fearsome competitor dive into the pit lane, he also set the mark to beat for everyone on track right now.
Quite a bit quicker than everyone else at that. His fastest lap, 31:55. The next closest, about a second back. Andy and Santiago running in the middle 32s. So Mariano on a mission with a little less ballast than his tightest competitor. You could see Ian maybe closing up a little bit coming into the final corner. We got a really good view where we can judge pretty easily how close they're getting to one another. Now looking back for Mariano, Ian looked like he might have touched the curb on the inside there. Back into the car, swinging away from him a bit. I'm noted a car on the inside of the circuit here. I was mistaken. It was actually just the signboards on the inside of the circuits with the Wayports advertisements on them. That was my mistake. Nobody there off the circuit. Everything normal there. And Ian sticking with Mariano, not getting too far away from him.
Well, Ian in his own right is a quick driver. He's proven that in the first season where he even stepped onto the podium. He had a little bit of troublesome season 2, so he was not always up there in the top spots, mostly fighting with Valentina. But now he is setting his aim on Mariano, who is the first ever Wayports Racing League champion in his own right.
In the background, as we were talking about Ian, we heard tires and horns in the sand, and then saw as they went through that Arthur was off track. So Arthur had been promoted to 8th place by virtue of Alex going off, now down to 9th. We didn't see what happened there. It's really easy to lose control of these cars, get the rear end of the car swinging around. We talked about the way that the car moves and the way the car grips the track earlier. Guessing he just got a little bit out of sorts going into that sequence of corners and then off into the beach.
Santiago in the pits.
He has indeed just stopped the car. He's taking a bit longer stop than everyone else. I wonder if he's chosen to repair damage. Chris in our ears telling us that he put fuel in. Andy's going to go by into the lead. Mariano should streak by to take 2nd place. No, he doesn't. Santiago manages to get out ahead of Mariano. They're going to be side by side the chicane. Mariano does get through, though that does put Ian right on Santiago's bumper. Now chasing Santiago instead of Mariano. Mariano off in pursuit of Andy in the lead. Yes, this has become a bit exciting. The 4 of them now relatively close together at the front. We'll see if we can get some door-to-door wheel banging action here in the next few laps.
It is a little bit misleading since Andy still has to do his pit stop for Vertex. So at least after pit stops, the theoretical lead battle is currently between Mariano and Santiago, as Ian seems to have lost grip of the drivers in front, running slightly wide, which is easily possible in that corner because there is no curb on the outside line.
And we see Ian carried a little bit too much speed into the corner there, off in the grass. Valentino will be all over him. Ahead of these two, we're keeping an eye on Santiago. 2 battles on track right now. Santiago chasing Mariano through the final corner, and now Valentino right there in contention with Ian one more time. Good onboard shot for Valentino over the curb on the right. Wants to take a little bit of the curb on the left. Big slide, but she manages to keep the car pointed the right direction. Gain a little bit of time on Ian. She'll chase him down into the first chicane and then through the back of the circuit. Slowly, steadily creeping up on him. A bit more consistent, it appears, than Ian right now. Ahead of these two, Santiago has fallen back a little bit from Mariano. Looked like he got the chicane on. Really good line through the chicane there from Valentina. She'll have a great run on Ian coming down into this corner. Now much closer than she was. Hard on the brakes. You can see the back of the car wanting to get away from her. Carried a little bit too much speed in there over the grass, but that's actually the shortest way around the track if you're willing to cheat a little bit. She'll have dirt on the tires, lose a little bit of grip, but she's still right there with Ian. Good racing between these two. Now following Santiago. Oh, go ahead, Tilo.
I just wanted to give a little rundown, as we have 1/3 of the race already in the record books, with Andy leading the race, currently still having to serve his mandatory pit stop. Currently very nicely in screen in 2nd position, Mariano in his red machine, followed by Santiago, the 2nd Vertex car. All within sight of each other currently. Ian in 4th position in the black and yellow car is followed by Valentina in the other McLean library car.
Speaking of that McLean library card, she got into the tires coming through the chicane. Managed to collect it. Oh, that's my mistake. I think that might have been Mariano ahead of them.
It looks so, since the front right of the car has a big dent as Mariano tries to get around his frenemy, Andy, for the actual lead of the race.
This is a
Around
bold
the
move here,
outside through
looking.
this kink is very unlikely.
Yeah, he thought better of that. It looked like he was fully alongside and thought he might give it a try, but thought better of it. Now he's tucked in behind Andy. He's got a great run through here, easily alongside. Andy giving him the squeeze. I don't know if that was deliberate or if he was struggling to control the car. Both of them hard on the brakes, into each other, door to door. Santiago forced off into the tires. The two of them collect each other. Santiago off into the rock wall there through the grass. Sorry, not Santiago. Andy off into the wall there, now falling to third position with Santiago right behind Mariano. Mariano and Andy perhaps getting a little bit rough through that sequence of corners, especially this early in the race, only a third of it gone. Might have been a bit aggressive from both of them. But that will promote Santiago to second position right behind Mariano.
Indeed. But speaking about the contact earlier, I think Andy tried to get around to cover the inside line. Oh, Andy is upside down.
Yeah, that's no good. There is no recovering from that. And unlike if you watch our NDR coverage or our MRC coverage, there's no recovery car, no course car to come punt cars over back onto their tires, no safety car to neutralize the field. He's had to reset and take off in pursuit of his competitors, now down to fourth place behind Valentina. Still ahead of Ian. Not sure what happened to Ian. Ian may have stopped and we may have missed it. We can check on that. But Ian demoted to fifth place. Ian, hearing in my ear that Ian pitted. So Valentina ahead of Andy on account of Andy's excursion onto his lid. Now Valentina up in third, about 10 seconds behind the two
Alex
leaders.
Is upside down, right in front of Mariano and Santiago is now on the bumper of Mariano.
Well, and right there, as we switched the shot, there was another car coming through the corner there. Looked like it was going to punt Andy over. I think that was Arthur. Yeah, Alex was upside down. I think that was Arthur coming through. Looking back to the leaders now, these two. No, it wasn't Arthur. It must have been. Yeah, it was. It may have been. Yeah, we'll have to look back and see what that was. Still not entirely clear what happened there. But looking back to the front of the race, Santiago still in pursuit of Mariano. Getting away from Valentina ever so slightly. Another second to that lap. We'll follow these two at the front.
Andy is doing his pit stop. And then afterwards, his mission will be the recovery drive. Currently, he is behind Valentina. And he's probably now falling behind. Yes, he is behind Ian, sorry.
There have been a fair few shenanigans in this race thus far. It is entirely possible that his competitors in the lead will bring this race back to him. It is not over for him yet with 16 laps remaining. Santiago now all over Mariano. Mariano covering the inside coming into this corner. Santiago's got a really good run. Now fully alongside, going to try to make this work on the outside. Thinks better of it. That was wise to get on the brakes, turn in late, and follow Mariano through the final sequence of corners. I've noticed coming through, we'll see if he does it again, coming through the final corner, Santiago, not sure he's quite accustomed to the ballast that he has in his car because he tends to go wide through the final corner. It is really easy to carry too much speed here. He may have heard me because he backed it off a little bit, goes right out to the gravel and the grass by the wall there. Excellent exit from the corner. He's going to be all over Mariano coming into this chicane. Won't be close enough to make a pass. It would be a brave pass regardless. But if he gets the chicane right, he'll have a nice run down to the next corner. Really leery of the curbs there. Don't blame him for that. Mariano had a great run through the chicane there. So holds on to his lead. Opens the gap by a few hundredths, maybe a tenth. These two go around one more time. Well ahead of Valentina now, 15 seconds back in third place.
But it is interesting to see that Santiago starts to really get the feeling of his car in comparison to Mariano's, because Mariano is noticeably earlier on the brakes. This part of the race, he is probably now feeling the extra ballast. The difference between those two cars is enormous, and especially in these high load, faster corners, Santiago has the lighter car to, at least place an overtaking opportunity like we've seen just from our blimp cam.
This is really smart driving of Santiago. I think he knows he's quicker. He's settled into a rhythm. He's driving really consistently. He's pretty conservative through a number of the trickier corners, but it is better to be conservative. Goes a little bit wide there, but he's still managed to carry the speed. A bit more conservatively, he's keeping the car for the most part between the lines, and he's doing a good job positioning his car to put pressure on Mariano. It looks to me like he's doing a really...
Oh! Mariano goes through the tire barrier, and this further, adds uniqueness to his car.
Yeah, I was about to say that it looks like Santiago is just biding his time, putting Mario under pressure, waiting for him to make a mistake, and then it happened as we were talking about it. Mariano made a mistake, got into the tires through the first chicane. Santiago was able to pounce. Santiago's a little bit close, nearly got collected in it himself, but he was patient. Mariano made a mistake. Now Santiago is off in the lead, 2 seconds clear of Mariano, who is now carrying a bit of new uniqueness, as you said, Tilo, to his red McLean Library machine.
This whole mistake now means Santiago is 3 seconds clear of Mariano.
Yeah, and that will have damaged Mariano's car somewhat. We can see the bodywork damage over that right front tire. These cars are fairly resilient, and the tires in the chicane are not as rugged, not as hard as they look. Certainly won't keep the car straight and operating in perfect condition, but he won't be compromised too much. In any case, the two of them still well ahead of Valentina in third place. Andy, though, slowly catching up to Ian further back. Watching Andy come through this corner now, we can see Ian just going through ahead of him. We'll now come through this sequence of sweeping bends. Andy on the curb a little bit, struggling with the rear end of the car. Now gets it settled, coming through the final sequence of corners. This turn 9 complex that is kind of an awkward final chicane over the grass there. That's not the ideal line, though. He made it work. Nice run through the final corner, off over the start-finish line in pursuit of Ian. Still about 2 seconds back. He may have lost time going over the grass there, but did manage to avoid getting into the wall. Still trying to recover his race after having a big off earlier while running pretty closely to Mariano and Santiago at the front of the pack.
At the very back of the field, we've got a battle for 8th position.
Oh, sorry, I got to interrupt you, Tilo. If we look back to Santiago, Santiago was battling with Mariano going into turn 7. Santiago was on his lid properly, had to reset, is now off in pursuit of Mariano, but Mariano now going to have a healthy lead ahead of Santiago. Santiago immediately back on the power. That's not going to work very well for him, because when you reset, it resets everything about the car. He'll be on cold tires, struggle for grip. He needs to tiptoe through here and be really careful. He's handed the lead back to Mariano, who has set off over the start-finish line and into the first chicane now, as another car comes out of the pits between these two. Big mistake for Santiago. He was driving consistently, patiently. He waited for Mariano to make a mistake, inherited the lead, and then made a mistake himself that promotes Mariano back to the top spot.
Yeah, and Mariano is back in the top spot with a statement, a 1:31 flat, new fastest lap of the race.
Watching Andy returning to our battle with Ian right now, both of them no reservations about sailing over the curbs and the grass coming through the turn 9 complex. Andy now right behind Ian, coming through this treacherous chicane. Ian, a beautiful line through there. Got a bit of the curb on the left and then just clipped it on the right. Andy a bit more aggressive through there, but both of them still maintaining this gap. Looks like Andy has a much better run through turn 2, now coming through turn 3 behind Ian. Andy is all over him, will now want to pressurize Ian into mistake. He'll need to be patient, unlike his competitors up ahead of him. If he can be patient and he can be consistent, his competitors are doing everything they can to bring this race back to Andy. He just needs to bide his time, make smart moves, and drive consistently to the front of the pack. Really good overhead shot there. He took the perfect line through that sweeping right-hand bend. It's almost flat in these cars. He just touched the curb to get the car to turn in. Now even closer to Ian. We know that Andy is much more confident on the brakes. You can see there in this excellent overhead shot how much later he is on the brakes and how much he closes in the braking zone. Ian a little bit wide. Andy now all over him coming through this sequence of bends around to the final corner and the start-finish line. If Andy's really brave, he'll try to make a move here, but if he's smart, he'll stay behind. He is, and he does. He'll want to do this a bit conservatively. He'll go right over the grass there. No reservations about cheating a little bit. Ian now coming up on a back marker. Ooh, the back marker moves over to the left side of the track. Couldn't tell who it was. It looks like one of the Bank of Wellington cars, either Eduardo or Wellington. Andy, I think, caught off guard a little bit.
From Eduardo.
Sorry, I read Wellington and it said Bank of Wellington. You're correct, Bank of Wayports. Andy all over Ian right now, coming through turn 3. Here we go. Ian putting on a spirited defense here, Tilo. He's done a remarkable job, though, and Andy is visibly so much quicker. While we were following them, Valentina, I think, was either in the pits or went off because Ian has been promoted to 3rd. Okay. Yeah, Ian promoted to 3rd, and Andy now up into 4th, still all over Ian's bumper.
Currently, with not nearly 2/3 of the race, we do have 3 different teams on the top 3 spots. And Ian is going to be desperate to, defend Lilium's position on that spot.
Hearing in our ears that... Oh, sorry, Tilo, go ahead.
I think we wanted to say the same. We just got the confirmation from our bird in the ear from Elmo that all pit stops have been served in this race. So the final 10 laps of the race will be, 11 laps of the race will be without pit stops to look for.
It's fun watching Andy coming through the final sequence of corners. He has no reservations about using all of the racetrack and then making some of his own racetrack. He carried a lot of speed just sailing over the curb and the grass to straighten out the turn 9 chicane. But I think it looks like he gets a good run out of the final corner, but it looks like in the run down to the chicane and then out, it's not benefiting him too much, though he did. Coming through turn 2 and turn 3, was much cleaner through there than Ian. Now right behind him again. Andy biding his time, just being patient. Doing what Santiago had done to Mariano earlier, though he goes a little bit aggressively into that sweeping right-hand bend, and we hear crunching off behind Andy. Looked
that
like
was
Eduardo behind.
Who, ended upside down, had to use the reset and continues his race in 7th position.
It's good that they're so spread out because that's a dangerous place to reset. The car was off in the grass, but Live for Speed tends to put you closer to the road. He reset right on the exit of that corner. Fortunately, the field spread out. Nobody coming through there. No accident. That would have been... Anybody coming through would have had a heart in the throat
Ian with
moment.
a mistake, and now this opens the door for Andy, and Andy takes the 3rd position as Ian clipped the curb too aggressively and got thrown out of balance.
Yep, that's what Andy needed to do. Now taking the chicane pretty conservatively, more than he has been on earlier laps. off in pursuit of Santiago in second position. He has a lot of work to do in 10 laps. That's about a 25-second gap up to Santiago. Not out of the realm of possibility. One of those stacks of tires off into the gravel trap as Andy went through. Didn't see why that was, but we can hear a car going through ahead of him. Not sure which car that is. But yes, Ian makes a mistake. Andy off in pursuit. Any mistake from Santiago or Mariano ahead could yet promote Andy to the front. He was running up there earlier. Alex from the Step Up team goes off in front of Andy, managed to get off, spun off the circuit. Andy through cleanly. Looks like Ian is through cleanly as well. Alex really struggling. Again, new competitor driving for the Step Up team. A really good cause to help protect trans children from bullying and harassment by monitoring for legislation that would target trans people. Really glad to have him in the race, but clearly he's a bit inexperienced, struggling, gaining experience coming around what is probably the most difficult track in Live for Speed to try to learn.
Agreed, but you really have to keep in mind this series is targeted for tech people, for competitors from the industry who are having, well, a different job of programming, of telecommunication management, etc. And they are all joining this league for the fun of driving and also to maybe get Wayports Racing League champion in the future.
I am a tech person too, Tilo. Are you suggesting that I am only in it for fun when I get behind the wheel of a pretend race car? I'll have you know I'm very competitive.
Yes, although the difference is you did not start the hobby by starting racing in the Wayports Racing League.
That is true. Following Mariano now, there was a car off on the left. Looked like one of the bank of Wayports cars. Thank you for your earlier correction. Looking at Arthur now, running in 8th place, had gone off. He spun off at the turn in turn 7. Now off and going again. Did not see which bank of Wayports that was off the circuit. Now looking at Santiago, who is well ahead of Andy in 3rd place. Also trailing by some distance Mariano. Got about 13 seconds to the lead. With the field spread out now. Ian, though, if we look back, looking on the timing tower, though he made a mistake that let Andy through, promoted him to 3rd position. Not falling too far behind, about 3.5 seconds back, though he gets the chicane a little bit wrong. That's going to cost him some time. He'll fall back a little bit further. As cars come through on this 22nd lap, we can reset the order. We've got Mariano at the front in 1st position, driving for McLean Library. Santiago in 2nd position, now going through one of the Bank of Wayports back markers. In 3rd, Andy was running near the front, demoted on account of a mistake to 3rd position, well off the lead, 36 seconds back. He was battling Ian a few moments ago, running in 4th place. Valentina, 23 seconds behind Ian in 5th. These two had a spirited battle earlier. If Ian makes another mistake, perhaps Valentina can find herself right on his bumper again. Then we've got Wellington and Eduardo, the Bank of Wayports cars, running in 5th and 6th. My mistake, 6th and 7th, sorry. Arthur driving for Atrium in 8th, and then Alex, the newcomer to the series, running in 9th. Alex, we had a shot of Alex there for a second. Looks like he has recently gotten another new car as Mariano goes through, takes the back marker through this very fast turn 5 and now into turn 6, the fast back part of this circuit. Comes down to turn 7. Now looks like he's running, well, I would think he's running a fairly conservative race. Still stays well off the curb there on the left. Looking at Alex now. Also, looks like Alex taking his time, tiptoeing around, kind of learning the racing line and learning the intricacies of this car, though the car is getting away from him a little bit. Really easy to do that in this car. It's frustrating with so much weight at the front. The back of the car really wants to go around, especially if you've just reset with cold tires. Now following Ian, who has closed up a little bit to Andy. He had fallen back to about 4.5 seconds. The timing just reset as they went through a split, 2.7 seconds back, so clearly Andy has made a mistake somewhere. Ian trying his best to recover that position, but that won't do it. He's going to touch the curb, get up on 2 wheels. Well held, good save from him. And it looks like he hasn't lost too much time on account of that mistake. That would have been a heart stopper, but he carries on as though nothing happened. On the brakes, great onboard shot here. We can see a lot of the racetrack, and we can see Ian working the wheel. He'll go right over the curb here. He wants to touch the curb a little bit to help the car turn in, but the rear of the car wants to get away on account of not having much weight, all the weight and all the power at the front of this car. He'll use the power to drag the car through the corner. Now coming through this turn 9 complex, close to the wall on the left, over the curb on the right, over the curb on the left. He's going to go way wide, though, a little bit too much speed, and into the wall, almost spins it, but manages to keep it pointed the right direction, and he'll come over the line to start his 25th lap. He had closed 2 seconds and then lost it again.
Oh,
back
Andy
to about
lost
4.
it. Ooh,
Yeah,
he's
Andy lost it.
as Ian lost it.
Yeah, behind him, as you said that Andy lost it, there was an explosion of tires as Andy went straight through the chicane, and then Ian was hard on the brakes and lost the rear of the car. Really easy to get spooked through there when you see, when you see all of the accoutrement of the borders of the circuit suddenly, looming in your windshield. Really easy to make a mistake like that. He appears to continue unscathed. I don't see any substantial damage on that car. That would have frightened him something else, even more so than his dip into the curb on the previous lap. Exciting moment for the two of them, but they continue. That drops Ian back a little bit further, now 6 seconds back through that split. Lucky moment for them that it didn't end their race or at least demote them a few positions.
A bit disappointing for Ian, I guess, because if it weren't for those 2 mistakes we've seen on the stream, he might have had the opportunity to get past Andy, or at least to attack Andy.
Oh, speaking of mistakes, Andy's trying really hard to just make a non-corner out of that turn 9 complex. He is over the curbs and the grass on every single lap. Probably not worth the mentioning anymore. We can just take it for granted. But also consistently going through there a bit too quickly and then ending up in the grass and the wall outside the final corner, coming onto the main straight. Ian looks really good through there, just a little bit too quick, but manages to stay out of the tire barrier. He's trying hard. He's giving it his all to try to catch Andy. Putting a lot of lock into the front tires. He may be, I believe most of the competitors in this series are driving with controllers. Judging by his inputs, I believe Ian probably is. You can see lots of lock on the front tires and then straight again. Very difficult to drive with a controller. This is a simulator. It requires a bit of precision, but Ian managing it remarkably well. I can't do it. There was, I dare say famous, we'll say a well-known, valued member of the Live for Speed community years ago who drove a controller despite pleas from his friends and teammates to use a wheel. That would be Pick_D, a well-known controller driver. I got Elmo's in my ear now. I can tell he's rolling his eyes as I said all that because he had a wheel at some point and refused to use it. So watch this broadcast, Spencer. Everybody's still ribbing you about this. Ian off in pursuit, not giving up, stays well clear of these very dangerous curbs, carries good speed out of the final corner. As we look ahead to Santiago, who is slowly catching Mariano. Not sure if Mariano made a mistake or if this is the natural ebb and flow of the competition. Santiago, about 13 seconds clear of Mariano, putting in fairly consistent laps. When he comes across the line, he will have 3 laps remaining to try to catch Mariano. I think that's a tall order to make up 4 or 5 seconds a lap in the final laps of the race, but anything is possible. We've seen a lot of things happen up and down the field during this competition, as I can heard a car go off somewhere. Wasn't behind Santiago. We'll have to check on that. Arthur now stopped in pit lane for a very lengthy stop. Not sure if he was repairing damage. I don't know that anybody would. Nobody would need to repair damage. You could just as easily reset, as many drivers have done during this race. But stop he did, repair damage, and off he goes. And we can also see, if we look at the bottom of the order, we can see, I had not noticed this before until Elmo mentioned it in my ear, Eduardo now 26 seconds off the lead. He must have pitted at some point. As we watch him go by Alex, who's crunched the front of that car again. Alex gaining valuable experience today, newcomer to the series, driving for the step-up team. As we look to Mariano, who's going to be approaching Alex, the back marker, coming around to start his 28th lap. He'll want to be cautious here because he's secured a very healthy lead, won't want to lose it. Very slow through the final sequence of corners, patiently following Alex through, probably frightening Alex a little bit, driving that close to his bumper coming out of the final corner. But now off down the center of the front straight. He will put the lap on Alex, who tucks in behind, learning to drive in the slipstream. That's valuable experience. And now through the first chicane, over the left-right combination. Valentina just misses Alex behind, who got into the tires. A lap behind her teammate, with the two of them running line astern in these red McLean Library machines. Alex trying his best to make a pass there. Oh, just got ahead of Valentina, gets the punt through the tires. Valentina will just miss Alex rejoining and continue her race.
One difficult aspect of Live for Speed being a simulation is the way the grip levels are changing throughout your stint. And if you're not really used to racing games or racing simulations in particular, this might catch you out at the very early steps of your journey through the wonderful world of sim racing.
Yeah, but it's a fair bit different from Forza. Forza more, I'd say it's grown more like a simulator with its iterations, but doesn't have quite the depth of simulation that a game like Live for Speed does. Live for Speed, for what it's worth, for those watching who don't know, known for its unique tire model. So it's unlike the tire model in other racing simulators. The circumference of the tire is divided into a number of sections, and then the surface of the tire is then further subdivided into 3 sections, and each of those gains heat and wear independently. You can flat spot the tires. The tire deforms when the car goes around the circuit. Makes it very, very tricky to drive for newcomers, as Tilo said. It's a unique experience to Live for Speed.
Mariano is on the final lap. He is going through the... Oh, and we just saw Santiago exiting the pits, and we were told he was in it to get a little bit of fuel into the car, so he might have miscalculated the fuel load he needs to finish this race. Well, no harm, since he kept second place, well ahead of his teammate Andy, who just crossed the line to start his final lap. 27 seconds.
Oh, sorry, Tilo, sorry. Mariano is on his lid from the lead. He clipped the curb coming through turn 8, and he is on his side now. He is mired. He needs to reset. Valentina goes through. I don't know what the rules of the league are. I probably should have reviewed them before the race started. In a New Dimension Racing series, that would be strictly forbidden. Yeah, he would be gaining an advantage, but yeah, he is. Yeah, Elmo telling us that he is allowed to reset. Nearly biffs it on the final lap. He didn't have to do that, was able to reset. He'll still finish in the lead, well clear of his competitors, flashing the lights as he come across the line. Heart attack moment for Mariano. He would have felt so silly if that had come to grief and he would have lost first position. But he manages to reset in time, though he was lying on his side, to take the victory for McLean Library, following Andy in third position right now. Alex coming through. He'll be a few laps off the lead. Santiago taking second position, 20 seconds behind Mariano. That was about 35 before Mariano's excursion into the grass on his side. Be watching for Andy to come across in third position in a few moments. Watching the line. There's another back marker coming through. That's Arthur, who will finish probably in 8th, 9th position. There's Wellington coming through, and Andy in third position, about 46 seconds behind. Now waiting for Ian to come through in 4th position, unless he's made a mistake somewhere around the circuit. Ian coming across the line now to take 4th position. A minute clear of Mariano. And now we look for the remaining competitors. We should see Valentino come through in 5th.
Valentina is through the final chicane. She would have finished a couple of seconds behind Mariano if Mariano didn't decide to roll it over the roof. And now Valentina finishes the race, and that's everybody classified.
Yep, that is, you are right, that is everybody. 8 drivers finishing the race. Looks like Eduardo properly retired, doesn't show up in the standings there, but will be credited with 9th position. So, there we have it. Round 3 concluded. All of these cars stopped in the gravel trap outside of turn 2. Probably stuck there. No course car to help free them, but the race is concluded at this point. They do not need to continue. And there we have the race results. Mariano in first position, running the race in 45 minutes 18, completed 29 laps, just as we predicted. Santiago about 20 seconds back in second position, and Andy rounding out the podium in third. In the 4th position, Ian, 5th, Valentina, Mariano's teammate, in 5th, and then Wellington and Arthur, 6th and 7th position. Alex, in his debut, manages to secure 9th. And then credited 28 laps behind in 9th position, Eduardo. Tilo, that was fun. That was exciting. I enjoyed that.
That was really an eventful race, and on such hard track, it really is open until the very last corner. I mean, we've seen Mariano on the roof 4 corners from the start-finish line.
There we go. One more look at the race results. We can see Mariano in the top spot. That will tighten up the championship fight. Andy and Mariano, before this event, were running 1st and 2nd. Andy had 47 points, Mariano 43. Andy will fall down the order 1 position on account of finishing in 3rd place. That'll promote Mariano to the lead. Santiago will remain in 3rd position, so the championship fight will stay pretty tight going into the next round. We will take a break for a few moments to prepare for interviews and return shortly. All right, we are back and ready for interviews. We've got Andy, Mariano, and Santiago, top 3 finishers, lined up to join us here in the commentary box. Hey, there we go. Mariano, a P1, a heart-stopping moment there in the final lap. Tell us about your race.
Yeah, that was a long race. With this new system that we're doing, trying to compensate each other's pace with the ballast, and those passengers, I had to drive on the edge the whole time. So that was a lot of laps on the verge of a mistake. You saw me doing one mistake at the chicane. And then I guess I let go a little bit of the focus on the last lap, and I just didn't see. I touched the curb and I just flipped.
Yeah, we were counting everybody around and waiting for everybody to come across the line, and then Tilo lost it because Mariano was on his lid. So that was a very exciting capstone to the race. A difficult circuit. How do you like Fern Bay Green?
I love it. I love racing in this track. Usually, when we have the normal rules without the extra weight on the car, I managed to, have a smooth pace around it, so that I know that I probably won't get in trouble like I did today. But today, the only way was to push. It's a technical track, and you see it just. If you're really on the edge all the time, sooner or later you're gonna pay for it.
Yep, absolutely.
But yeah, it was a good race. I'm a little sad about Andy. I think we couldn't test the system enough, and he just had like a little too much weight on the car, and he couldn't be part of that fight. We had a really nice fight with Santiago, and I enjoyed it. I just wish Andy was part of it.
So we noticed, speaking of the ballast and the your effort to shake up the racing a little bit, we noticed early on that you traded positions with your competitors. What happened there? Was that just to make things interesting, or did I can't remember if it was Santiago or Andy? Did one of them have a problem? Do you know what happened?
So Santiago forgot to add his ballast for the qualifying, and he got that pole position goes to me actually, because he did it without any extra weight on the car. So then what he did was whenever I was close enough to him, he just let me go because that was my pole position.
Right. Thank you for reminding me of that. I'm sure Elmo is groaning in my ear now because he said that during the race and I forgot it. Thank you for clarifying. Sorry, right. Elmo. I remember you saying that now. All right. Interesting. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. That was fun to watch. Hope you had fun. And I believe you are now, I didn't go run the points, but just doing a quick mental math, it looks like you will be promoted to the championship league. How do you feel about that?
That's great. That's a great weekend feel, and yeah, I'll cherish it. Hopefully I can win again soon. Yeah, feels great.
Awesome. Well, thanks for talking to us. Tilo, do you have any questions for our winner?
Every time I wanted to say something, you already came up with the same thing to ask. So it was really nice to see you three fight throughout the first third of the race when it was very close and no mistakes done yet at that time. The only thing I was surprised by your very early and quite late decided pit stop. We were suddenly spearing off to the right of the TV screen and entering the pit lane in a moment where we did not expect you to.
Right. I didn't expect to pit either. I was planning to do that on lap 16, but I saw that. So first of all, Santiago was really fast behind me. You know how Santiago is a really different driver following than he is leading. So I knew that if I got that reference, that visual reference of being ahead of him, if I got that away, I knew he would struggle. So I tried to do exactly that because I saw, as we cleared that last turn, I saw there was a car in front of us. So I figured, let him deal with that car. Let's stop right now. And well, after I pit, I realized, oh man, now I have all this weight from the fuel. But I don't know, it was a rash decision. I luckily it was okay. Yeah, it was interesting. Then Santiago kind of covered that same strategy and took away my worries because I was worried that I was being a lot slower with all that fuel on board.
Oh, that's smart. I think that's a fundamentals of racecraft to make that kind of decision.
Yeah.
Well, good race. Well done to you. Congratulations on P1. And thanks for entertaining us for the last hour and a half or so. And good luck in the next round.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, guys. Take care.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
Next, we'll have a chat with Santiago, our second place finisher. Santiago, welcome. Second place today. You may have thought at the end of the race, I assume you saw the gap coming down when Mariano was on his lid coming around the final corner, but not quite enough. You finished P2. Tell us about your race.
Well, it was pretty fun. I really like the fact that you need to be very careful and stay focused on the race. I really thought I was going to end with no fuel. So on the last lap, I had to pit stop.
Speaking of the pit stop, did you calculate it fiercely, or was it a felt decision what fuel you were putting in?
No, it was my mistake. I didn't calculate it. I just calculated with one person, and when I added the copilot, I didn't change it. I really forgot.
Oh, I see. Speaking of the co-pilot, how do you feel does this change the driving, especially in such a long race?
Well, you really can feel it. I don't even think how it feels for Andy that he has 3 passengers. But yeah, it's like you're so slower now.
Tell us about the early battles you had in the race. The three of you were running pretty closely early on, and then looked like mistakes shook out the race a little bit. How was it trying to fight? You talked a little bit about running with the additional ballast and how much different the car is. How is it trying to fight like that?
Well, I don't know how to tell you, but in some parts I knew that I was faster than Mariano, so when I was behind him, and when I get pole position, I really try to increase the gap between me and him. But I flipped my car. That was a bad mistake, and then I committed a lot of mistakes that I could have avoided.
Fair enough. Well, you finished P2 today. I assume you're pretty happy with that result. You like P1, but P2 is a pretty strong result. Congratulations to you, and thanks for entertaining us. We really enjoyed that. And good luck in the next round. You're welcome.
See you
Next,
guys.
Yep, see you. Our last interview, we'll talk to Andy. We'll bring him into the box. Andy, you were the... Oh, Andy's out of the box. We'll wait a second to bring him back in. There we go. Now we've got Andy. Andy, you were the championship leader. You finished P3 today, so I believe you'll be demoted. Talk us through your race.
Yeah, absolutely. That was great fun. And we talked all the week, what should we do to give us some handicaps? And it was a great idea with the passengers. But I think it was one passenger too much for me. That was really crazy to drive that car. I'm like a bus driver or a cab driver.
Yes, some moments it really looked like you were a bus driver with all these heads in your cars. But you gave them quite a ride. Tell us through the more difficult situation in the chicane. How did that happen that you spun out there and lost all the time?
Yeah, I think the race was lost already and I tried something. And the big mistake I had was I had less fuel than I needed. And when I recognized that, I was driving with a lift and coast, and when you don't know your braking point and you lift and you brake at the wrong moment, then you go right into that barrier. So that was not a good idea. And then I found myself in position 5 fighting with Ian, then in position 4, and that was very exciting. That was a lot of fun. There was no chance of fighting for a win or a second place, and I think Santiago and Mariano did a very great job in front of me.
Yeah, tell us about your battle with Ian. We noted that Ian ran a pretty consistent race and then ended up fighting there with you. We know you to be a bit. I dare say you're the quickest driver in the competition. You and Mariano were pretty close, but you ended up in that battle with Ian, perhaps balanced out a little bit by the ballast. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. The great idea with the ballast, we tried on Thursday, and I saw Ian doing the same lap times like Mariano and me, and I thought, okay, that can be close. And I had the better start, but then after my mistake, we almost had exactly the same lap times, and it was really fun fighting him and driving in his line and slipstream and waiting for any mistake that did come very late. He really did drive very consistent. Great race by him.
It's a great drive by him. And I've got one more question for you. When you watch back the replay, you'll hear Tilo and I, probably mostly me, I don't want to blame Tilo for this, giving you a little bit of grief about your line through the final corner. You had no reservations about sailing over that curb and straight lining through the grass to line up that final corner. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, should look like track limits here. But I tried it with 3 passengers, any other line. There was no way doing that turn. So that was a bit risky. And I thought, yeah, let the spectators enjoy that race and not do a boring race and risk a little bit. I hope it worked, yeah.
So after such an event, you're still satisfied with the 3rd place?
Yeah, I think today it was the best I could do, so I'm pleased. The championship is still open and anything can happen. And maybe we change that ballast system a little bit for the next race. Maybe we drop it completely. One race should be with ballast. I think it should be Mariano having 2 passengers. I take 1 passenger, and then we drop that thing again.
There you go. Throw your competitor right under the proverbial bus and give him some extra passengers. I like that. Well, I believe you'll be demoted to P2 in the championship. So were you to stick with this ballast system, you would be taking a little bit less than Mariano in the next round. But either way, you'll be P2 in the championship. 3rd place today. A good effort from you. That was a lot of fun to watch. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. All right, Tilo, I believe that's all we've got for today. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts, a very interesting race. I mean, the cars around such a difficult track really brought spectacle. There's no other opinion on that, I think. Drama throughout the field. The new ballast system showed potential, and now it's on to the organizers to evaluate if this is what they are going to pursue throughout the rest of the season. But an interesting take on the racing here.
I agree. Fun to watch. The ballast made for nice close racing. Lots of exciting moments. I think we had a good time today. Well done to the podium finishers. Mariano in 1st position, Santiago in 2nd, and Andy there in 3rd. I think that is all for us today. Join us again next week at the same time. It'll be Saturday morning in the United States, afternoon in Europe, and then in the evening in the Far East for round 4 of the Wayports Racing League, Season 3. My name is Travis Mellinger, joined today by Tilo Falkenberg. Chris McElroy was in the background doing the cameras and the production. Thanks very much for watching, and we will see you next time.